opening of the 1989 The Little Mermaid begins in a misty gray. It's cold and dreary. A ship breaks through the fog and a captured fish dives to safety into the ocean. Immediately, the colors give way to a vibrant sea blue. We see a rainbow of sea creatures before revealing the golden light of Atlantica. As the movie progresses, the color scheme shifts from deep blues to Caribbean warm tones, evil purples, romantic teals, and heated oranges. With such a beautiful aesthetic to work from, why then do the live-action visuals look like this? Murky blues and hues so dark it's difficult to see anything. Why choose this color scheme? Is this a good decision? And honestly, does it even matter? Well, I can't tell you what their exact thought process was. My guess is it's meant to look as realistic as possible, and the darkness hides the details they didn't have time to render. But I will say that choosing this aesthetic for a whimsical children's fantasy movie isn't the best decision, and it matters greatly, at least to me, for several reasons. Number one, this color palette just isn't that pretty to look at, especially for a fairy tale. Two, it doesn't hold up to the vibrancy of Disney's original animated version that both saved the studio and kickstarted the Renaissance era. And most importantly, three, it doesn't capture the essence of Ariel's story. And yes, a simple color palette can be just as important to telling the story as any other element of a movie, as important as the camera angles, costuming, acting, script, you name it. At the time of recording this video, the live action isn't out yet and I haven't seen it, so it's quite possible that there are scenes that are vibrant and colorful, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but the fact that there are scenes that do look like this, it's enough for me to be making this video. To clarify, this video is about visual aesthetic and story. I'm not discussing race. Also, I'm not arguing that the live action should look exactly like the animation. My point is that live action doesn't have to mean 100% realism or desaturated colors, and I would have loved if the remake had a more creative inspired design. Lastly, anytime I refer to the original, I'm referring to the 1989 Disney animated version, not the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale it was based on. So let's take a look at why exactly this isn't visually pleasing, how it compares to the original, and most importantly, why color is especially important for Ariel's story. There are two main uses for color in film. I'll explain both quickly, and then we'll look at how it's specifically relevant to The Little Mermaid. The first use of color is practical. Certain colors are chosen because, quite simply, they just look pretty together. Complementary colors, analogous colors, and monochromatic colors, these are all examples of harmonious color schemes that make a movie pleasing to watch. And sometimes filmmakers will forgo realism just so it's a more visually beautiful experience. And there are several other straightforward and practical uses of color. For example, colors can make characters stand out against the background. Colors can be chosen for costumes so they best suit the actor's complexion. Props might be colored so they read better on camera. Even though it is just a color, even at its most basic level of practicality, it still requires a certain level of expertise, time, and vision to make each scene look cohesive and beautiful. All things I think Disney has the resources to prioritize. The second use of color is to support the story. Color psychology, which includes the common associations we have with each color, and if we're talking about Western movies, these are typically Western associations. It's a common technique used to convey different story elements like the mood, atmosphere, emotion, and everyone's favorite, symbolism. But my favorite is how it reflects a character's journey. A simple color can give insight to a character's personality, their relationships, conflicts, and most importantly, their growth. Now, the age-old question is, how can you tell the difference if a color is chosen practically or intentionally for the story, or if there was any reason at all? Well, sometimes you can if the director and crew make their intentions known, like in an interview or behind-the-scenes documentary, and other times it's just up for interpretation. Personally, I think that you can choose for yourself whether a color has a meaning or to simply enjoy a beautiful visual. But one thing I do want to note is that regardless of how you feel about color, when it's done right, it should blend seamlessly into the story and just make sense. If you start to question it negatively, that's when you know something is wrong. The 1989 Little Mermaid has a complementary color scheme and is characterized by saturated blues, greens, reds, purples, and yellows. These bright colors establish the oceanic atmosphere and create a mood that is youthful, energizing, playful, and bold. Because we can suspend our disbelief more with cartoons, animated movies have the advantage of using intense vibrancy while still making the movie look believable, and they'll often use candy colors which are enticing to children. In The Little Mermaid, not every scene is so lively though, and this creates a balanced contrast as the mood changes. I'll go through these specific differences a little bit later. The 2023 Little Mermaid prioritizes a monochromatic blue color palette in the ocean and a sandy light palette on land. Practically, it makes a lot of sense that the colors are less saturated than the animated version. Oversaturated colors in real life can look cartoony and fake, and actually, I think a lot of the live actions are too saturated, but that's another video. In the remake, the blues are realistic to the sea and grounds the movie in reality. The colors are also darker, which makes it grittier, modern, and more dramatic. On the spectrum of blue, it leans cool-toned as opposed to a tropical warm-toned blue. Unfortunately, because there is so much blue, it creates this isolated, sad, and cold vibe, and perhaps this makes sense given Ariel's longing to be out of the sea, but this isn't the most visually pleasing, especially since the hues are so dark and there isn't much separation between colors, so there's less dimension and it makes it look more flat. If we take the color away, the dark values make up most of the screen. It needs more strategic lighter values for contrast and visibility. Some dark scenes look okay because there's better lighting. Even in the lighter scenes, there's also low contrast because it's mostly mid values. The background, midground, and foreground blend together. We can also just focus on the color. Underwater, there's only a couple different hues. Compare this to a dark scene in the animation. There's blue here too, but Ariel adds warmth as a balance. Even in the brighter scenes in the live action, they have less color variety and a grayish tint. Even in this Our Planet documentary, the natural colors of the sea are vibrant and varied, and nighttime is visible. It's practical for the ocean to be blue, and it makes sense for the story for so much blue since blue is a sad color and Ariel is unhappy. But since this has a minimal variety of hues and minimal contrast, we don't get that beautiful monochromatic color scheme that some other movies have. For land, they opted for airy and light tones. It does look beachy and sandy and is reminiscent of the original, yet even on land, it struggles with the darker hues at nighttime. Ariel gets completely lost. Halle is the cutest little thing, and she sings these songs so majestically that she deserves to be complimented better visually. She should stand out just as much as her voice does. In fact, let's talk a little bit about Ariel. If I were to show you the colors bright red, lavender purple, and seafoam green and asked you to guess the character, I'd be willing to bet that you'd say Ariel. That's how strong of an impact color alone can have and how iconic Ariel is. The live action does use a similar color scheme for her, but there is one specific element that I wish was more vibrant, which is her hair. Ariel's original character design, and specifically her hair, is a perfect example of using color practically and to support the story. In initial sketches, Ariel was blonde and her hair was changed to red for several practical reasons. First, red distinguishes her from the previous princesses of Aurora and Cinderella, and from the mermaid in Disney's movie Splash, which came out a few years earlier in 1984. In animation, red is easier to darken or lighten than blonde for different lighting situations. Red is also the complementary color to her green tail and is more vibrant against the ocean blue background. Since blue is a cool color, the warm red balances out a mood that might be interpreted as dreary and sad. When it comes to the storytelling reasons, I'll touch on that when we discuss Ariel's story in detail. With Halle's Ariel hair, it's not that I don't like this shade. I think she pulls it off very well, and I think it looks beautiful on land. It's the underwater scenes where I start to miss the vibrancy of the fire truck hair. You can see how much of the screen her animated red hair takes up in the ocean scenes. It adds so much warmth and energy and life. Now, I know this is live action, it's not animated, and there are some things that just don't transfer well to live action. So I really want to stress that I do not want to put Halle in some intense clown red hair. The red hair that I would love to see Halle in, I already know she'd look great in it because it's the hair that she wore to the premiere. It's darker and richer and saturated, but not so much that it looks silly or fake, and you can see how beautifully it complements the blue backdrop. Now, is this hair a natural shade of red? Not really, but vibrant red is a part of what makes her character so recognizable, and Ariel's hair isn't a realistic shade of red anyway. For some reason, Disney equates live action to pure realism, but I don't think that has to be the case, especially when your story is about a fantasy creature that doesn't exist. With this brownish red hair, it is more realistic and she still looks beautiful, but it doesn't have the same impact or high contrast underwater, so Ariel doesn't stand out as much. And so to me, making her hair a bit more vibrant would have been a really good practical color choice. And also, since Ariel's tail retains so much vibrancy, we don't get that same color palette that's as strong as her animated character has. Now, when it comes to Ariel's tail and top in the live action, I do have some thoughts on this as well. I think Ariel's tail looks absolutely phenomenal. I really love this angelfish design and this iridescent glow. It stays true to the original while adding unique details that aren't possible in hand-drawn animation. I love that they've kept her iconic seafoam green hue and added hints of purple and a deeper emerald green, but gone are her lavender seashells. Instead, we get an ombre scaled top lined with a ruffled trim, and let me just stray away from color here because I just have to talk about this. Design-wise, I'm honestly a little sad that they switched out her seashells, and I was trying to think about a reason of why they did this, and I think maybe it's just less revealing or maybe easier to work with for the underwater CGI, or maybe it was just a creative decision to make her look different than the animated version. But I do miss her seashells, I have to say. But let me just bring it back to the point of this video and focus on the color. The iridescent ombre is very pretty, and I'm appreciative there's purple in it, but we already have this similar design with her tail, so the top doesn't add anything new to her character, unlike the animated version. You might be thinking, this is just a purple top, like how does it really add anything? But I think it does, even if it's only a minor detail. So let's take a look at who Ariel is and all the creative ways they use color to help tell her story. Ariel is a curious and headstrong mermaid who is fascinated by the world of humans. She isn't afraid of the unknown. Instead, it excites her with discovery and adventure. When it comes to a foreign world, Ariel is open-minded, opportunistic, and inquisitive. She spends most of her time exploring the ocean floor for human inventions. Anything that piques her interest, she adds to her extensive collection hidden in an underwater cave. Judging from the cluttered walls and multiple variations of the same item, life on land and has intrigued Ariel for years. Now, as much as Ariel is brave and fearless, she's also immature, naive, and rebellious. Ariel's fierce personality is characterized by her burning red hair. Red is the color of boldness, passion, and intensity, which is exactly how Ariel approaches life. This is also something the animators really loved about choosing red hair for her. And this is another reason why I think Halle's Ariel needs more vibrant red hair. It would complement the cool waters beautifully, but establish her daringness immediately. At 16, Ariel is the youngest of 7 and a defiant teenager. Even among her own family, Ariel is a misfit and is visually distinguished from her sisters. She's the only redhead and the only one to have free-flowing hair, and this complements her free spirit and desire for freedom. She's also the only sister where her seashells have a very different contrast to her tail, whereas most of her other sisters have very closely matching tops and tails. It shows her individualistic personality and unconventional interests. In the live action, Ariel's top and tail match, and so she loses that unique identifier among her family. It's a detail I loved in the original, and I do think it's significant enough to carry to the live action because it matches her character so well. The first thing we learn about Ariel is demonstrated beautifully in the tonal shifts in color. We learn Ariel is a talented singer, but often misses practice. Everyone is looking forward to her debut performance at a lively and happy celebration filled with vibrant color, but she doesn't show. Cut to her location and she's off exploring an old shipwreck. From the darker hues, it's mysterious and tense and a little dangerous. This is where Ariel would rather be. The possibility of finding a new treasure is so exciting that the ominous tone doesn't even bother her, and she completely forgets about her own celebration. Even though missing the recital isn't intentional, it does show where her priorities lie. In Part of Your World, Ariel dreams of things that are impossible for a mermaid. The only light is from the sun above, which is where she wants to be. And this is Ariel's identity conflict. She isn't happy where she is, but can't physically be where she wants. As much as Ariel longs to be with humans, this is a problem for 2 reasons. Most obviously, she has fins and is bound to the sea. And second, her father, King Triton and the ocean's ruler, is severely protective and believes humans to be evil and dangerous. Ironically, throughout this whole movie, every single threat that is posed to Ariel comes from the ocean. And this is often reflected in dark and light color palettes contrasting. Sebastian, the king's royal advisor, is ordered to keep an eye on her, but she just as quickly defies rules again when a ship and brightly colored fireworks entices her to investigate. It's here where Ariel sees Prince Eric. He's handsome, playful, humble, adventurous, and has standards for love. Naturally, Ariel develops a crush on him. When the ship is struck by lightning, Ariel defies her father and risks her identity to rescue Eric, who, by the way, goes back on board to rescue his dog. He's a very selfless man. Despite forceful winds and rough waves, Ariel is strong enough to pull him to safety. Again, we go from a stormy color scheme at sea to a light, warm, and calm color scheme on land. This contrast is replicated in the live action, but this is an example of where practically it isn't done as well. In the animated version, the light from the explosion pierces through the ocean. It's still a dramatic scene with music, animation, and overall dark tones, but the added light from the fire makes it visually understandable. And even in the dark scenes, Ariel stands out. Here, I can barely make out what's happening. I don't mind a darker tone, but I wouldn't sacrifice visibility for it. On land, her desperation to be human is reinforced. Now, not only does she want to be a part of the human world, she wants to be in a world with Eric. It's here where part of that world becomes a part of your world. True to his promise to the king, Sebastian attempts to convince her she should be grateful she isn't human. This entire sequence is an explosion of color as Sebastian markets his version of the sea to her. The animators intentionally changed the background to match the emotions of the song. For example, for "The Fish on the Land Ain't Happy," the color fades to a depressive purple, and for "We Got a Hot Crustacean Band," the colors become intense, hot oranges. It cycles through a rainbow of vibrant colors, showcasing the beautiful variety of the ocean before ending back at basic blue, which is reality, and of course, what Ariel is avoiding. Then it turns to a dismissive gray. The live action doesn't have the same vibrancy or enthusiasm. This shot's only additional color is red, and in the wide shot, it's mostly sand. Less color creates less energy, which is what Sebastian so clearly promoted in the original, because you can see just how fun and energetic the difference color makes in a musical number. When her father realizes she's in love with a human, he becomes furious and destroys her collection. His anger is represented by an intense red before turning into a sad gray at Ariel's loss. Desperate and grieving, Ariel finds hope in the sea witch. Ursula promises her a human form if she gives up her voice. If she can secure a true love's kiss in 3 days, she can remain human permanently, otherwise she'll belong to Ursula. Ursula's scenes are categorized by a deceptive purple, and when Ariel's voice is ripped away, Disney's iconic evil green. Purple is typically a luxurious color, so when it's used in a negative way, it takes on this self-indulgent, arrogant, and social climber tendency. Ursula is vengeful towards Triton. She was kicked out of the palace and she's trying to scheme her way back to power. I love how Ursula has such a strong presence that she gets her own color scheme within her layer. Disney's green represents greed, envy, and selfishness, which describes Ursula's personality. In the live action, Ursula has neon blue tentacles. I would have loved purple to reference the original because there is already so much blue in this movie, but the blue does give her an icy, cold presence. The purple layer is also switched out for red underwater volcanoes. I don't mind this decision. I don't think everything has to be exactly like the animated version. I just think the issue here is it isn't that visually pleasing. This original layer feels inspired and magical and dynamic. Here, it's too dark again, and the sparse neon colors aren't enough to emphasize Ursula's cunning presence. When Ariel becomes human, she wears a pink dress, which matches the soft sunset in the background. Pink is a sweet, innocent, and romantic color. It's here where she tries to get closer to Eric. Cut to Triton, who's trying to find Ariel, and the colors are dark and depressive. Again, even though this is a dark scene, it's clear what's happening, and because the movie has so many alternate color palettes, it's impactful when we cut to a scene that looks like this versus many underwater scenes looking like this. At the lagoon, it's lit in a romantic teal and by moonlight. It's the perfect atmosphere to set the mood, paired with Sebastian's song, of course. Glowing fireflies emphasize the mood at the height of the song. Again, the live action version leans dreary rather than romantic. There's no soft blue-green hue, it's almost pitch black, and the light from the fireflies don't even reflect onto Ariel and Eric. At least we do get this bioluminescence. I think this is very nice, but the most important thing here, I think, are their facial expressions. We really want to see how these characters are interacting with each other in this scene, and when there's very little lighting, it's hard to do that. I do love how after their failed kiss, Eric, who's in love with this mysterious voice who rescued him, chooses to abandon that dream for a girl he's genuinely fallen for, a girl he's spent time with and made memories with. But then it's ruined by Vanessa, Ursula's alter ego. She's dressed in her same iconic purple. The marriage is held under a burning orange sunset, which is far more heated and energized than Ariel's soft, romantic pink sunset a few nights ago. It gives a sense of urgency and intensity, which makes sense because Ariel must stop Eric from marrying Vanessa and have Eric kiss her. The first is successful, but the second isn't, and Ariel returns to her mermaid form. Ursula takes her, and the sky turns to Ursula's purple once she starts winning. Triton sacrifices himself to Ursula, so she takes him prisoner and lets Ariel go. There's a battle. Even in this scene, there is dark purple and pink to give the sense of dimension and to light where Eric and Ariel are in the water. And even though Eric saves Ariel here, I think this is a beautiful symmetry to the beginning because Ariel saved him first. In the end, Triton learns that humans aren't evil and realizes his daughter should be free to make her own decisions. He turns her human once he realizes how much she loves Eric. They marry and we get a celebration of love and happiness symbolized by a beautiful rainbow. Ariel's story is one of bravery, curiosity, identity, and love. Her story, emotions, and character are so perfectly complemented by the beautiful color palettes throughout this movie. Now, I don't go through this story expecting a frame-by-frame replica in the remake. In fact, I prefer a creative reimagining where it makes sense. I just want to show how much color can add to a story and make a movie pleasing to watch. The remake doesn't need to be as saturated as the original, but it doesn't need to look dreary either. And I realize these live actions are primarily made for the new generation of kids and the adults second, but I don't think that makes it any less important to prioritize visuals. Colors are especially important for children and for a story that is full of whimsy, magic, and emotion. I have no idea how hard it is to animate something like this, to do this CGI, so I'm really just talking about this from a general audience perspective. If you see this video after watching the live action, I would love to know what you think. Maybe this video will not hold up at all, or maybe it will hold up completely. I have no idea. I hope I'm pleasantly surprised when I see the movie, but until then, I hope you have a lovely day and a swimmingly good night. Thank you so much for watching.